Hey there, good evening everyone, and welcome to Prog Monster. My name is Murph. I am the host of this show, a show dedicated to progressive rock and other forms of rock music. So we're doing an episode today of What's New. And what's new today is This Is New. Jethro Tull. And I think you're going to pronounce this album Rok Flote. I'm not 100% sure, but I think that's probably what it is. So I got this album on the weekend. I've listened to it about 3 or 4 times now. The last listen to, I had it up fairly high on the volume. Much better sounding at the high level than it is at the low level. Low level, you miss a lot of little things because this is a very kind of a lot of intricate sounds. It's a quieter sounding album overall, but lots of really good sounds on it, and you miss them at a low volume because I was playing it while lying on my bed at a low volume a couple nights in a row, and then I decided, you know what, if I'm going to do a video of it, I got to listen to it at the full volume. So I did that today, recently, in the last hour, and I was very, very happy with what I heard. So I think I actually probably like this album more than I did the Zealot Gene, which I liked quite a bit. I think this one, the Zealot Gene, there was about 5 or 6 tracks on it I really liked, and then the rest of them is a little bit indifferent too, but this one I like almost everything on here. So for those of you who have not seen the inside of the album, so it comes with a little book. This book here, I like the little art part on it. I also wore the shirt that kind of matches the artwork there. You got a picture of everybody playing, who's playing on the album. Sorry, I'm gonna miss Ian Anderson over here in the over here in the far corner. Then you also have a part at the beginning which talks about the story. So this is basically I guess you would call this a concept album. There's a shot of Ian there too. Doesn't look too bad for a guy in his 70s, I think. And then you have your disc here as well. I'm just trying to do the whole 9 yards here with this album. There you go. Nice disc. Nice shot of Ian again on the back cover part. So overall, I really like this album quite a bit. More than at first, I was a little bit had a little bit of trepidation about it because I was playing it on a low thing. I thought it doesn't sound as good as the Zealot Gene. Maybe it's not as good an album. But once I played it on the full volume, I got a full effect, and I really enjoyed it after that. So before we go too far into it, I'll just give you a little bit of the background information. So basically, it's the story of Norse mythology. For those of you who know, that's Asgard, if you prefer, or the realm where Thor, the thunder god, comes from. So it's basically a little bit about, each song is a little bit about one of the characters from Norse mythology. I think there's like Odin, of course, Thor, Fenrir, the wolf, the Midgard serpent, or just the serpent if you prefer that. You've got the story of Balder and his blind brother Hodder. Of course, Loki is here, or Loki, depending on how you want to pronounce it. And you've got a little bit about Heimdall, or Heimdall. Heimdall is probably the pronunciation. The guardian of the Rainbow Bridge to Asgard. So you got a whole story here about the Asgardian thunder gods, the Asgardian gods, of Norse mythology. So I actually, once I read that that's what it was about, I immediately, my level was a much better interest. So then you have, so this album was released on the 21st, which I believe was last Friday, 21st of April. It's about 44 minutes, almost 45 minutes in length, on the Inside Out Music label, and produced by, of course, Ian Anderson of Jethro Tull. Featured on the album, Ian Anderson on vocals, different flutes, and Irish whistles as well. David Guder, or Guderer, I guess it's Guderer, on bass. John O'Hara on piano, keyboards, and Hammond organ. Scott Hammond on drums. I'm wondering if he's related to Jeffrey Hammond. I don't know. I didn't see any notes on that. Possibly. Who knows? Joe Parrish James on electric and acoustic guitar, and he does a great job on this, and mandolin as well. Okay, so you got 12 tracks. So the overall feel of this album, it's kind of folky. There's some folky parts to it, which, you know, talk about Norse mythology, so that probably fits very well. But it's got some heavy stuff too. A little bit of prog in here as well. Lots of flute. The flute is all over this album, as you might expect, with Ian Anderson being the... Originally, I think this was supposed to be an album of mostly flute, but then it took on a life of its own, which I'm happy it did, because this is an album of mostly flute. Sounds interesting, but I don't think it compares to an album of flute rock. Lots of good guitar riffing on this album, and the soloing is really good. The keyboards are good as well. Drumming is okay. You know, we got a little bit of everything here. I really like the way they engineer the song. There's a lot of really kind of maybe that mid-70s, 80s period of Jethro Tull sound here, but it's more subdued. Not as heavy, I don't think. And of course, most of that's caused because Ian Anderson's voice is subdued. He's much more like soft, a lot more spoken word. Like when he sings, it's kind of a spoken sound to it. It's not that shouting kind of dominating vocals that he had in the 70s, but still not bad. I mean, the music is set to fit the vocals, which is good. So, if you're expecting to hear another Aqualung or possibly Songs from the Wood or something like that, you're going to be disappointed, because those albums he was at his best vocal range. He doesn't have that anymore, but the flute is very good on this album. Some excellent flute playing. Okay, so you've got basically, and there's a female that does a couple vocal parts here too. She does a spoken vocal part in the opening track in Nordic, and then you have in the final track she does a little more of a singing type vocal part. I'm assuming it's the same female vocalist. I didn't see any indication of a second one. So, yeah, so there's a nice back part of it too, if I didn't show you that. Anyways, excellent album. You've got, I gave it pretty much 6, 7s, and 8s. Mostly the backside I thought was really good. A very strong backside of the album. The first 3 or 4 tracks, Valalupa, that's the spoken female part, and then Anderson does a kind of a spoken part here too, with some deep flute sounds to it as well. Yeah, it's a pretty, and then there's some heavy riffing as well from Anderson as well. Yeah, so I liked the guitar solo here too, not too bad. The next song, I'm gonna say this wrong, but I'm gonna try. Ganagap. I think I got it right. Maybe I'm wrong. Anyways, flute, nice flute opening with some nice guitar riffing, some heavy flute soloing. Again, lots of spoken. Almost all the songs are like that. It's kind of a spoken. There's a couple that he does a little more singing part too, and I want to say that would be, yes, I think the Hammer of Thor, or Hammer on Hammer. So the next track's All Father, of course, about Odin. Some catchy riffs on that. I like that quite a bit, that song. Then the feathered consort, which is of course Odin's wife. And I cannot remember her name right off the hand. It's on the tip of my brain. Anyways, Hammer on Hammer about Thor, of course. This is a more, strangely enough, a little bit more subdued song. It does have some heavier parts, but pretty much a subdued song. This is Thor's battle with the serpent, right? The Wolf Unchained is the story of Fenrir, the wolf, who one of the Asgardians. Pan? Was it Pan? No, Pan is from a different mythology, sorry. Who put his hand in the mouth of the wolf for a specific reason, and he ended up losing his hand. But anyways, it's pretty heavy riffing song. This is probably one of my two favorite songs on the album. I really enjoyed this song quite a bit. Lots of heavy kind of riffing and some nice, really good soloing on this track as well. And I like the flute, the catchy flute riff that he used as well. If that's it, can you call it a flute riff, or is it just a flute sound? I'm not sure. Okay, then you got The Perfect Time, which is an acoustic bit with some flute and organ mixed together on the opening, and then you end up with this kind of it's a kind of a story-like part to it. This is the part where it leads up to the death of Balder, which is, of course, for those of you who follow Norse mythology, Balder was killed by his blind brother Hoder, who was tricked by Loki to use a arrow, because Balder always did those displays where he would take arrows off the chest because they couldn't penetrate him, because he was Balder the Brave and he was invincible to those things. But Loki had, of course, made an arrow from mistletoe, which was something that could penetrate him, and it killed him. That unleashed the Ragnarok, which is the end of the world. So then you have the trickster, of course, about the mistletoe, and of course it's about Loki, of course. Cornucopia, another great tune. Lots of nice piano on this track. Then you get the Navigator with some strong kind of flute and some more strong kind of riffing on this particular track. I like this track a lot. The Guardian Watch, which is about Heimdall, or Hemdall if you prefer. It's got a nice kind of flute opening. It's a bit more subdued, this song, than you might think it would be. Then it ends off with Inthable. I'm probably not pronouncing that right. Nice flute opening, a little bit more melodic kind of guitar riffing on this particular song. Overall, the guitar is pretty strong. Quite a bit of riffing throughout the song, but not dominating riffing. Like a little bit more subdued, out shorter versions. Some soloing, but not dominating soloing. And actually everything kind of fits the piece almost perfectly in a lot of ways. The only kind of weak part is that, for me, is that sometimes the songs seem not so easy to differentiate between. I think you got to listen to them more to kind of get, oh yeah, that's that song, oh yeah, that's the song. But sometimes it's hard to decide which song you're listening to without actually looking at the list, because there's a lot of similarities between a lot of the tracks. To me, that's the only kind of weakness on the album. I liked the guitar overall, especially the electric soloing part and some of his riffing, which was really good. Of course, it's dominated by flute, like I've already said. He's got a lot of different flute sounds going on here. There's a couple of songs where there's a whistle in it. I think there's one song with a whistle and another song that has a mandolin, but I can't remember which track it was. Anyways, overall, very strong album. I think it's maybe a little stronger than Zealot Gene, but it's still too early really to tell, because I've only listened to it a half a dozen, not even that, maybe 4 times. It takes a little longer than that, especially with Jethro Tull, because it's so intricate, for me to really gauge whether I think I like it more than Zealot Gene or not. And the only reason I'm comparing it to Zealot Gene, because they came out about a year apart. This is the the newer kind of style of Jethro Tull. I would call it the newer style because it's not as bombastic as it was before. His voice is, of course, not to the level it once was, so he's having to change the music style, a more subdued sound, to fit his voice right. But there's still a lot of Jethro Tull element to the album that people will recognize as Jethro Tull immediately. And I've actually enjoyed both of the last two albums. This one I'm getting into. It'll probably go immediately into my playlist. I don't normally do that. I usually follow the rotation before they get in there, but it's Jethro Tull and it's new, and I want to get right into it right away, so it's going to be in like that. So if you haven't had a chance to listen to this album, well worth the price of admission. I paid with the taxes and everything, I paid about just under $20 for it. And I feel like I got a good, I feel like I'm getting my money's worth with this album. Sometimes, you get an album that you pay 20 or $25 for, and you say, oh my God, I could have bought 3 albums for this one. Not the case here. Solid album. I highly recommend it. If you're a Jethro Tull fan like I am, then you'll probably really like this. There are, of course, going to be those people that can only listen to one style of Jethro Tull. I don't know which style that is, but they only want that certain style, and if it isn't like that, it's crap. And that's just the way it is with some people, and there's not much you can do about that. But I've set my eyesights differently with this. I expect a different sound than I would have got from my 70s and 80s Jethro Tull, so I'm not expecting that. But I really enjoyed this anyways. So anyways, I hope you like this album, and if you do, please like and subscribe for the video. It's much appreciated, and this will come out probably on Thursday, because I have my favorites are tomorrow, and that's going to be a fairly lengthy video. I think it's going to be probably in the 30 to 35 range, just because there's a lot to it. So this will probably come out on the Thursday, which is today's Tuesday. So a couple days, I'll put it on back hold for a couple days so that people can do their other things. Okay, so anyways, I hope you enjoyed this video, and we will see you again soon. From Prog Monster, have a good evening. Take care.